It is my pleasure to introduce Senator Jack Reed. Senator Reed is a longtime friend of General Dynamics. He's a chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Chairman Reed was born here in Rhode Island in Cranston. He graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1971. Went on to earn a law degree from Harvard in 1982. After serving on active duty as an officer and a commander and a major in the reserves, Senator Reed practiced law in the private sector. He served 3 terms in the Rhode Island State Senate, 3 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives, and was elected to the United States Senate in 1996. Senator Reed has been a steadfast leader in the federal level at growing the industrial base here in Rhode Island. I think that's evidenced by our beautiful facilities here in Quonset Point. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Senator Chairman Jack Reed.
Thank you very much, Mark, and hello again. This has been, I think, already a very exciting conference. I'm particularly impressed with the comments by my colleague, Senator Whitehouse, who is one of the great leaders in the Senate on climate change. And we all recognize that climate change has a profound effect on national security. And so he is leading us in I think, a direction that's far ahead of the rest of the crowd, and I thank you for that. I think you've really had an opportunity to see the remarkable talent that is assembled all around you. You've had a chance to talk to other people, and that's one of the key aspects of SENEDIA's Defense Innovation Days, the opportunity to communicate and to get to know other companies, other individuals, and I think that will continue through today. But at this moment, we have an extinct privilege and a great opportunity because our next speaker is the Secretary of the Navy, Carlos del Toro. This is a pivotal time for the United States Navy. In the Indo-Pacific and the seas and ports around the world, America's Navy and Marine Corps continue to be the first line of deterrence and defense against our adversaries' expanding global ambitions. And this mission grows more complicated each and every day as multi-domain competition involving sea, land, air, cyber, space, and information creates new challenges. But a good challenge has always brought out the best in our Navy, and it will bring out the best going forward. Secretary del Toro has done a remarkable job. I've been up close watching. He's been an extraordinary leader, and it all starts with integrity and decency, and he has those qualities quite profoundly. He is steering the Navy forward. He was sworn in as the 78th Secretary of the Navy in August of 2021, and for the past 2 years he has helped modernize the Navy, securing the resources that's necessary for successful operations and taking on the most pressing global challenges that confront the service. He is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, and he served as an officer for 22 years. This is a remarkable achievement for someone who's not had a college education. Forgive me, Mr. Secretary. After his retirement from the Navy, John McCain would have done the same thing to me. It's just, we go back and forth. After his retirement from the Navy, he founded his own company supporting defense programs with cutting-edge technologies. And along with other defense leaders here today, Secretary del Toro is an important signal about how critical and vital this conference is. It demonstrates the importance of the events and the work that you all do for our nation's defense. And I know he will find that the companies represented here in SENEDIA are well positioned to support him in his efforts to transform the Navy and the Marine Corps for the future. And I had the privilege of walking around with Secretary Toro yesterday, and the interest, the enthusiasm, and real engagement with all of you was obvious, Mr. Secretary, and I thank you for that very much. He's a tireless leader. He's an advocate for the United States Navy, and it is my pleasure to welcome to the podium the 78th Secretary of the United States Navy, Carlos del Toro.
Senator McCain may have dogged you about it. I'm a little bit more careful. Good morning, everyone. Before I begin my formal remarks, I would like to ask everybody, if they would, to please bow their heads just for a few seconds in honor of the 3 Marines that we recently lost in Australia and the several others that we've lost in these last couple of weeks. Thank you very much. It's a constant reminder to me as Secretary of the Navy, and certainly to all the leaders who served in both as civilians and uniform service members, that the decisions that we make in the military and the decisions that are made up on Capitol Hill and those by the President have real consequences on people's lives, and they impact people's lives. And we all know, many of you are veterans out there, that we serve in a very dangerous environment. And we should never lose sight of that any time that we make a decision, whether it be an acquisition decision or a personnel decision or anything else. We should always have the true interests of our Marines, of our sailors, of our other service members and the other services in mind as we make these difficult choices. Now, if I'm moving a little slow today, I apologize. I've just spent 9 days in Europe. I went to Sweden and then went to Finland. Of course, we're all hoping that Sweden will soon join NATO in the months to come. And then Finland, who we're very proud to have as a new member of NATO. And I thank our members of Congress for all the efforts that they've put in, certainly on their part, to make that a reality. But then I ended up in Dublin. And so 24 hours ago, I was serving Guinness at an extraordinary pub, the Kavanaugh Pub in Dublin. And needless to say, the proprietor said that if the Secretary of the Navy thing doesn't work out, I could have a job as a bartender in Dublin. But it was wonderful to go to Dublin, obviously, for the Notre Dame Navy rugby game, which we won 78-0. And then there was the other football game. But what can I say? They're twice our size. They're 1.5 times taller than we are. And they're also great Americans as well, too. And we have some Navy midshipmen. In fact, most people don't realize that the second source for naval officers in the United States Navy, both Navy and Marine Corps, actually come from Notre Dame. So they're great Americans, and it was a great day for all of America. And I traveled to a few places here and now and then, but rarely do I ever bring 40,000 of my best American friends with me. It was a madhouse in Dublin, so needless to say. But good morning to all of you. And thank you again, Chairman Reed. It meant a lot to me to be introduced by you. And Senator Whitehouse, I cannot simply thank you enough for your leadership. Let me tell you, how many of you are Rhode Islanders through and through? Okay, awesome. You are so blessed to have these 2 senators in the state of Rhode Island. You know, everyone's special, but these 2 individuals are really special in their commitment to our service members in the Navy and Marine Corps. I'm not just saying this, folks. I don't say this everywhere I go, at every state that I'm in. I've seen this firsthand. And their commitment to our service members, their commitment to climate, to national security is truly, truly extraordinary. And so I'm deeply blessed. As I've told the chairman many times, sir, I will support you 364 days of the year. One day where we may disagree from time to time. But short of that, I am deeply, deeply grateful for their leadership. It makes my job so much easier. Of course, it's my great pleasure to speak to all of you here today, and I'm delighted to return to this conference once again. This is my 3rd time as Secretary of the Navy. My 3rd time. Let me say it again. This is the 3rd time that I've spoken here at SENEDIA as Secretary of the Navy. Yes, 3 years in a row. By now, half of you are thinking, okay, Secretary Del Toro, we can count to 3, we get it. So what? Well, you'd have to go back 7 years acting or appointed secretaries of the Navies, back to Secretary Mabus, before you'd find someone who could say that they've been in office long enough to go to any conference 3 years in a row. Now, can we just pause for a moment and think about what that kind of turnover at the very top of an organization responsible for the security not only of our nation, but of much of the planet's maritime commerce, an organization of nearly 1 million dedicated sailors, Marines, and civilians, what that kind of instability does to an organization. President Kennedy famously said, when we got into office, the thing that surprised me most was to find out that things were just as bad as we've been saying that they were. Well, I was astounded, quite astounded at the state of the Department of the Navy when I first came into office. Astounded and dismayed, and all the more determined to turn the ship around. And let me tell you, we are doing exactly that. And today I'm going to tell you how we're turning that ship around. First, a few words about this conference. When I was commanding officer managing the complex industrial operations associated with completing construction of a nearly $1 billion warship, and yes, that warship's a little bit more expensive today, but nevertheless, I relied on the expertise of industrial-based leaders and supervisors of shipbuilding to make sure that we got the job done correctly, on time, on schedule, and on budget, which I take very seriously as Secretary of the Navy. As CEO of my own company, I leveraged the expertise of business advisors from across the ecosystem to negotiate business deals with some of the largest companies in the world. And today, as Secretary of the Navy, one of my top priorities is enhancing the Department of the Navy's partnership with you, our defense industrial base, because it takes a team to deliver platforms on time, on schedule. A team of large businesses, medium businesses, small businesses, government officials, outside organizations, Congress, the executive, the interagency, all working together with one purpose in mind: to get the most out of the American taxpayers' dollar on behalf of our national security. And so, today, as Secretary of the Navy, one of my top priorities is enhancing the Department of the Navy's partnerships with you, our defense industrial base. And that is, like I said, because our nation expects us to be ready with the necessary capabilities and capacity to prevail now and in the future. We cannot do that without a tremendous and continuous push to innovate. And my job as Secretary of the Navy is very simple: to provide combat-ready forces and capabilities to our combatant commanders so that they can execute the orders of the President and the Secretary of Defense. Ensuring the readiness and modernization our sailors and Marines need to succeed in their mission is fundamental to all that we in this room do, whether we work for the private sector or for the public sector. What we do here together at this conference, the connections that we make, the relationships that we build, is truly critical to our nation's success today and tomorrow. Working to ensure the security and prosperity of our nation is that team effort that I mentioned. And I truly believe that we are all collectively up to that task. And the challenges are great, but there can be no doubt about that. That being said, we do face these formidable challenges. Our competitors have invested huge amounts of money into building up their capabilities, and we must keep the pace. So now I want to tell you how we in the department are working to do just that. I want to give you a few highlights of the progress that we've made on a number of key modernization efforts like the chairman mentioned, as well as the way forward. And as I give you the numbers, the facts. We use facts too loosely in this business. Talk is cheap in Washington, D.C. What we do is what matters. What the Congress commits us with the resources to do in the executive and how we execute those resources is what matters. So let's get to the facts. I'll start with shipbuilding. In partnership with our Congress and industry, we are more efficiently and affordably procuring ships by leveraging the advantages of block buys, which I'm a strong believer in. In this manner, we will provide our industry partners with predictable ship and submarine build schedules so that we can achieve on-time, on-budget deliveries. Just a few weeks ago, we awarded 9 additional DDG-51s as part of the fiscal year 23-27 multi-year procurement contract. We have an additional 86 ships under contract and 54 in construction, including our highest modernization priority, the first Columbia-class SSBN, the most survivable leg of our nation's nuclear triad. Did you hear that? 86 under contract and 54 in construction. We are modernizing our Department of the Navy and Marine Corps. When I came in 2 years ago, in many ways I inherited layman's Navy. There were still elements of it that still were sailing around. and our responsibility is to modernize that Navy and grow it as much as we can. The submarine industrial base does face an increase in demand as the Navy ramps up production of the Columbia class while continuing to procure 2 Virginia-class submarines per year. Congress has partnered with us, adding investments in the submarine industrial base, and for that, we are extremely grateful. And we need to put those resources to good use, working in conjunction with each and every one of you to, again, make sure that we get the most for the American payers' tax money. These authorities' investments have led to key benefits, including improved workforce hiring at our submarine shipbuilders and the establishment of dedicated training centers and pipelines. This has resulted in over 3,500 people trained since 2020 and approximately 1,000 new workforce personnel and about 120 small to medium-sized industry partners. And the work that's going on here in Rhode Island and Virginia, in Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, and many others of these centers is critical to the work that lies ahead. I'm committed to expanding our submarine industrial base, and the recent trilateral security pact between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, better known as AUKUS, is a historic opportunity to do so with some of our closest allies. Here again, the Congress has shown great leadership, partnership, and commitment by introducing several bills that provide the authorities and relief needed to rapidly achieve the aggressive goal of delivering a sovereign, conventionally armed, nuclear-powered attack submarine to our partner in Australia. And I think the Marines would agree that AUKUS is already putting partnership into action. Just last month, we held Talisman Sabre 2023. I was there. We commissioned the Canberra, and the 31st MU participated in landings with Australia, the UK, and a dozen other partner nations. And while we're talking of Marines, let me give you a quick update on amphibious transports. USS Fort Lauderdale, LPD-28, brought new capabilities to the Navy and Marine Corps team this year. The LPD-28 represents the next generation of amphibious warships, and we will need them. We will need them to transport large numbers of Marines across the Indo-Pacific over very long distances, along with all the logistics that goes along with that. And we also need them as we continue to advance unmanned technologies across our force and our fleet. Over the last several months, the crew of the USS Fort Lauderdale and Marines from Camp Lejeune have planned for crisis response missions and executed ship-to-shore training to ensure our naval forces remained ready to respond. Nowhere is that probably more obvious than today in the Persian Gulf, where 2 of our 3 amphibious ships in that ARG are present in the Persian Gulf, protecting our economic interests of the oil that crosses across the straits. Closely related to shipbuilding and equally important is ship maintenance. Here, as well as a few key initiatives that are making a tangible difference. Most notably, we are realizing significant reductions in days of maintenance delay across ship platforms through targeted improvement efforts and the use of data analytics. Did you hear what I said? Significant reductions in days of maintenance delays. We are making things better. Look at the facts, look at the numbers. Don't just listen to the rhetoric that's out there complaining about things that existed 10 years ago. From fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 22, surface ships alone saw a 42% reduction in days of maintenance delays. Submarines and public yard availabilities improved 29%. All platforms saw a reduction in days of maintenance delay from fiscal year 21 to 22, with days of maintenance delays fully eliminated for aircraft carriers in fiscal year 22 to 2022. We are trending in the right direction, but we still need to do better. I remain committed to working with all of you to drive maintenance delays down to as close to zero as possible. The investments that we're making in the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program, or SIOP, are also helping us to get there. At Pearl Harbor Naval Station, I saw firsthand how our investments are modernizing our naval shipyards for optimal performance. We awarded a $2.8 billion contract for dry dock number 3 replacement just last March, and we will break ground later this month. That is an enormous investment on behalf of the American people. And the SIOP program is moving ahead across all the other of the 4 public shipyards. We recently completed a new basin at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard and are subdividing that basin into 2 modern dry docks. In the Pacific Northwest, the design of the new multi-purpose dry dock at Puget Sound is well underway. It is critical that we further increase and distribute our ship repair capacity in the Pacific, and we are studying options to do so. It will be critical in times of war, I guarantee you. Beyond our own shipyards, we are investing in our industrial partners, including a $400 million targeted shipbuilder, infrastructure supplier, and workforce development, technology advancements, and strategic sourcing. Another area that we are making tremendous strides is modernizing the supply chain itself. And that involves so many of you. Metallic printers were first installed on board USS Essex, USS Baton last year. Afford the fleet onboard production and repair capabilities is so critical when you're out to sea and can't pull into a port to fix the equipment. I know from my own time at sea that waiting for parts has negative effects not only on our operations but also on the morale. So these tools are truly a game changer in many ways. But we also need additive metal manufacturing in our industrial base if we are to deliver all the ships and submarines that the fleet requires. Projected manufacturing readiness levels and current and future supply chain issues demand it. And that is why we established the Navy's Additive Manufacturing Center of Excellence in Danville, Virginia last October. This center is building part data to transition to industry for serial production and distributed production, lowering barriers for new entrants to the Navy's industrial base. And just as critical, Naval Sea Systems Command has developed additive manufacturing processes for over 500 certified parts used in ships and submarines. Additionally, we increased funding for maritime aviation and weapons spares and have made these a top priority to ensure our fleet is self-sufficient and ready for sustained operations. These efforts are part of our $2.3 billion investment to support the industrial base over this past fiscal year. Nowhere is innovation more needed than in the cybersphere. And our pursuit of information superiority. Our networks continue to evolve to leverage new technologies and improve our warfighter and cyber domains. I don't know if General Neller, are you in the audience, sir? He may not be here this morning, but he was here last night. Tremendous respect for General Neller as our 37th Commandant of the Marine Corps. He understood that if we're going to be successful in war, we got to be successful in cybersecurity and cyberspace. And he started making those investments as part of Force Design 2030. And those investments were followed by General Berger and Mike Gilday as well, too. These are the investments that we have to invest in because we are not fighting the last war. We want to deter from having to fight the next war, which is what's really important. The Department of the Navy is accelerating adoption of proliferated low Earth orbit as well, too. This game-changing commercial technology available now creates operational advantage by providing persistent, secure, global access to resilient, high-speed, low-latency satellite communications for warfighting support and quality of life and work solutions. When I worked at the Navy Reconnaissance Office as a program manager in the mid-'80s, if you even mentioned the word small sat, you got thrown out of the building. Today, it's all about the proliferation of low Earth orbit satellites. And it's making a difference tactically, operationally, and strategically in how we fight our joint forces across the globe. We're using the lessons learned from migrating more than 500,000 users to cloud-based flying speed, to pilot the last mile in Nautilus, by efforts through PO Digital to improve the user experience of our workforce. In the afloat environment, the Consolidated Afloat Network Enterprise Services CANES program introduced the Cyber Threat Upgrade, providing modern, adjunct, computing capacity, supporting the hosting of project overmatch capabilities on 20 platforms across 3 carrier strike groups that we are now operationalizing after 2 years of investment in Operation Overmatch. And I can't talk about it much, but it is making an extraordinary difference, and believe me, the Chinese are running scared. We have installed and tested infrastructure on multiple platforms, enabling over-the-air software updates to underway afloat units, which is also critical. And speaking of these over-the-air updates, Spectrum is one of the key enablers for many of our IT cyber innovation efforts. We're beginning to think differently about Spectrum. Specifically, I believe we need to pursue Spectrum agility, or the ability to design spectrum-agnostic systems where practical, with multi-communication paths for mission assurance. Not all innovation is technical, however. We're also thinking differently about the way that we manage cybersecurity. We're used to managing cyber through a compliance-based approach, a checklist, basically. That means that somewhere a system owner fills out a checklist, that checklist is reviewed, and the application in question is given an authority to operate on our network. Then we rinse and repeat that process every several years. I've asked the CIO, and the PCA, my principal cyber advisor, to help move from this approach to a readiness approach base, building cybersecurity into system design and maintaining currency through continuous monitoring and teaming. This we're calling Cyber Ready, and I'm very encouraged and excited about where we are going with this project. I'm also committed to increased investment developing and fielding autonomous interoperable systems to better pace our rivals. In the last 2 years alone, We have made profound progress by employing our unmanned systems on ranges and long-range deployments in the Pacific, as well as in the actual contact with adversaries in the Fifth Fleet. In April, I announced a second unmanned operations hub in Fourth Fleet, replicating Task Force 59's success in Fifth Fleet. And I think we have the Commodore from Task Force 59. He might be here. Do you hear? Commodore is out in the back. So if you have questions about unmanned and what we're doing in the Navy, go see the Commodore. In January, Marines from 2nd MEF supported the third iteration of Task Force 61, Naval Amphibious Task Force Europe. The task force ensures continued integration of the blue-green team across U.S. 6th Fleet. Forces assigned to TF-61 support contingency, planning, enhanced maritime domain awareness, and further test and refine COMSIS as a stand-in force for U.S. European Command. This summer, we ensured that Navy UAVs, USVs, and UUVs participated in multilateral exercise UNITAS 23 in Colombia. We are taking unmanned technology that has been proven through the concepts of operations in the Fifth Fleet for the past 2 years, and we're taking it to the Caribbean so we can do 3 things. We can combat illegal drugs coming up the south coast of the United States, working with our friends in the Coast Guard. We could try to also stem the illegal flow of arms coming out of states, particularly in the East Coast. And third, shine a big bright light on the illegal fishing that Chinese are doing around the globe. So we can demonstrate every single day their bad behavior and how they're not operating the norms that are expected throughout the globe. A few weeks ago, we awarded a contract in just 28 days, mind you, to support maritime domain awareness in SOUTHCOM. We also commenced deep sea testing of Orca, the extra-large UUV vehicle, capability with potential to change how we operate and deliver lethality under the sea. In addition, for the first time, we've embedded automatic target recognition into our Mark 18 UUVs, the first use of artificial intelligence in UUVs. I mentioned several areas of progress in the green side of the house already. And it should come as no surprise that Marines are moving out decisively towards the vision laid out in Force Design 2030. 2 months ago, the Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, or Nemesis, very exciting, successfully conducted 2 naval strike missile tests. Nemesis gives the Marine Corps its first capability to contribute to sea denial and sea control operations with ground-based anti-ship missile fires. Even more recently, the Marine Corps stood up its first ever mobile ground-launched Tomahawk cruise missile battery. Who would have ever thought when I left the military in 2004 that Marines would be firing Tomahawk missiles from ashore, in addition to the Tomahawks that are carried on Navy ships at sea. Our Marine Corps is indeed wholly committed to modernizing and innovating, and that's one reason why we stood up the first of its kind Marine Innovation Unit in Newburgh, New York. I had the honor of activating this unit in May. In a few words, the Marine Innovation Unit is the latest embodiment of the Marine Corps' legacy of innovation. Its 200 and so members have tremendous expertise and connections to both private industry and the defense science and technology community. And they come across, most of them are reserves, they come across from all over the country. The Department of the Navy is building on the success of the Marine Innovation Unit by creating the Naval Innovation Center, co-located at the Navy Postgraduate School. And I thank the support of the chairman and other senators in creating that as well, too. In closing, our Navy and Marine Corps team is working hard every day on these initiatives, and so many more that I just don't have the time to talk about today. And yes, I've gone through a long list of advances that we've made because it is important for each and every one of you and the American people to understand that we are truly advancing at a tremendous pace across the Department of the Navy. Of course we have challenges, of course we have problems, but we can't continue to dwell on the past. We've got to focus on the future. And this is the future. This is what we're doing with your American taxpayer dollars, putting them to use every day. So to those out there that continue wanting to criticize our organizations, continue to criticize our people, stop it. Work with us. Focus on where we need to go instead of just constantly commenting on the past, for God's sakes. I'm a little passionate about that. Indeed, I wish that every citizen of this country could see for themselves just how much our sailors, their Marines have accomplished. We have every reason to be both proud and thankful to our great men and women in uniform and to give them every bit of support that we can. It's the least that we can do in return for all that they do for us every single day. And all this hard work, this progress on so many fronts, it doesn't come a moment too soon. I will do everything in my power to ensure that we stay at the forefront of building the warfighting capabilities and the industries of the future. And yes, I have stepped in your shoes. Today, This is more than $53 trillion in private capital is available to be harvested for investment in future problems. And we want to ensure that this investment is targeted towards our needs. The great news is that there is a tremendous amount of innovation focused on solving our national security problems today. The proof of it is right here in this room. I'm incredibly thankful to the energy, the drive, and the passion that so many of you put into making our nation stronger. And God willing, I will see you again next year for my 4th, 5th, and 6th visit to SENEDIA. Of course, that's up to you, the American people. But God bless our sailors, our Marines, and everyone who works in our great Department of the Navy. God bless each and every one of you. You are part of our family. We cannot do what we do without you. Large companies, medium-sized companies, small companies, all working together with one effect: to keep our American citizens safe in this country for the future. Thank you. And I'll now take questions.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Thank you so much. I'm asking because it's personally affected me, but what is the Navy doing today to continue to get rid of the stigma regarding mental health and the struggles of sailors and even Marines, when suicide rates are so high? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a problem across our entire nation. And we, of course, resemble our entire nation. There's no question that when you think about the challenges that our nation has faced with 3 years of COVID, the anxiety that that's created, and much of our nation has also been negatively impacted by other serious factors such as the growth of fentanyl across this entire nation, which has such a negative impact. Of course, we inherited. Those are the young men and women that join our Marine Corps. And it's a real challenge. And one of the things that I'm proudest of, actually, that our President, our Secretary of Defense, and myself, with support, a lot of support from Congress, have actually been dedicated to the quality of life of our sailors and Marines. And I can tell you that wasn't always the case. I could say that because I served for 22 years and I lived it, okay? The care that we put into the feeding and the caring of our sailors and our Marines today makes a difference. It makes a difference. And I know that we're struggling sometimes with recruiting. There's no question about that for multiple reasons. I could spend almost an hour talking on that subject alone. But you know what? Retention in our Navy and Marine Corps has been up nearly 10% over the past 2 years. That doesn't happen because Carlos del Toro is Secretary of the Navy. It happens because there's a whole team of people dedicated, civilians and uniformed service members, and caring about our troops in a way that we haven't before. So whether it's their pay, with a 5.2% pay increase proposed in this year's budget, and I'm confident the Congress will pass that. Probably see similar increases perhaps in the future as well too. Whether it's housing, paying attention to the quality of housing. For many years we paid attention to the quality of family housing. Now we're paying a lot of care actually to the quality of unaccompanied housing, right? BAS, all sorts of issues. We have challenges when it comes to medical, obviously, that we have to overcome as well too. But everywhere I go, when I finish up my conversations with our sailors and Marines, I say, there's a lot of things we're trying to do on your behalf, but I also need you to take care of each other. To recognize that that young sailor or Marine that reports on board your ship, your aircraft, your unit, your submarine, whatever tomorrow, matters as much as the commanding officer of that ship. And you have to have empathy. You have to understand the challenges that they're facing coming in, the challenges that they face during tough environmental situations, such as living in shipyards, for example. I lived in a shipyard for over a year. It was tough. It's a tough environment to have to live in. So we have to be smarter about building parking garages, about ensuring that shipyards have cafeterias, about ensuring that we're taking care of our people, and by building better. We just last week actually had delivered one of our very first berthing barges, medium-sized berthing barges in the Navy. Some of these berthing barges have been around since, I think, World War II, for God's sakes. When I came in, I said, we got to put money in the budget to get rid of these old berthing barges that are 40 years old and get new ones. So I hope that all those things, cumulatively speaking, will make a difference for young people to understand that there's nothing more precious in life itself, that we care, and we need to work together to try to come to a solution as to how to best support and help each other. It's not an easy problem, believe me. and I'm fixated on investing and working with people to better understand the problem set of mental health and doing everything we can to make a difference, both in the Navy and Marine Corps. The same thing applies to the other services as well. Thank you for that very important question.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
With regard to AUKUS, there have been a lot of stories in the news about potential reductions in ITAR restrictions. More specifically, there's a proposal, I think, in the Congress to totally eliminate ITAR restrictions with respect to Australia for a period of 20 years. Certainly, I'm in favor of that. But anyway, I would like to know what your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
my favorite two words, life and balance and compromise. I doubt we'll eliminate all restrictions on ITAR. But nevertheless, we probably have to seriously look at which ones we can reduce so that we can actually get to a better place far faster than we are today. And that just doesn't apply to Australia. It applies to a lot of other allies and partners who we probably need to exchange information with a lot quicker. The pace of technology today, I don't have to tell you in this room, is moving in far faster than it ever has before, right? And so as you look at the advancements in software and AI and machine learning and everything, by the time the decision gets made to release something to a partner or an ally, we're already on the second or third iteration of that technology, right? So something has to be done to fix it, and I think that the State Department is working collaboratively with us to try to find solutions. I know that the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the House Foreign Relations Committee are working with our Armed Services Committee to try to find that right solution. So I think things will get better, but it'll take some time to get to the right solution. Yes, sir.
Mr. Secretary, good morning. AJ Jarnigan, CEO of Expansion. Grateful for your advocacy of all business and selfishly small business for all you're doing. My question is specifically, though, about the Joint Force. As you think about the threats that are happening, obviously with your role in the Navy, what gives you hope as you think about some of the announcements coming out around autonomy and new ways to tackle the threats out there? What specifically gives you hope as it relates to where we're going to get after in a joint manner across all the services?
Yeah, obviously, as Secretary of the Navy, I talk a lot about my beloved Navy and Marine Corps. But the reality is that we are one component of the Joint Force. And as we provide, ready forces and capabilities to the Joint Force, it's within the lens of the entire Joint Force. And that's extremely important. So when I talk about Operation Overmatch, for example, that's within the construct of JATC2, for example, right? We always have to be ensuring that we're not creating redundant capabilities across the forces so that we can mutually support each other as required when they're called to combat together. And we spend a lot of time doing that in both the on the third deck in the Office of Secretary Defense and with the chairman and the Joint Chiefs as well too, building out those requirements. So we try to do the very best we can to be additive in terms of what we're doing to the Joint Force instead of just being redundant. And I think we're making progress. There's no question about it, especially when you take a look at the work that all the combatant commanders are doing operationally, from a warfighting perspective that I can't talk about openly. And in cyber and space as well, too, by the way. Yes, sir.
Secretary, thank you for your time today. In a similar vein, and one of the things that you kind of brought up was regarding mean time between repairs. And I think a lot of that has to do with component lead times and things that we've all been affected by here as manufacturers. What are we going to do to kind of eliminate the need to be so dependent on Asian-based components and to kind of have more of a Buy American type of philosophy going forward?
Well, and the
president,
dollars. Again, the president working with the Congress, I think, has shown tremendous leadership in coming up with the CHIPS Act and getting the CHIPS Act across. And we thank the support of the chairman and all senators and members who voted for the CHIPS Act. And I think that will make a transformational change in building the types of technology that we need here so that we can be less dependent on other nations around the globe, just as one example. The supply chain has shrunk over the last 10 years. I don't have to tell you that. We got to figure out a way to expand it again, right? Which is why I'm so supportive of small businesses, because we need more small businesses to have the confidence to say, Yeah, I know the DoD, the national security agencies, are tough to break into, but I got a really good product here that I think can be useful to the Department of Defense. We got to give them the confidence and lay out the programs to help them sort of come into this national security community of industry, so that they can then work with the medium-sized company and the large companies, the large primes, collectively together to build out. So just from 22 to 23, we put in $1.3 billion, yes, write it down, $1.3 billion more into the hands of small business competitive awards across the Department of the Navy to give small businesses and to try to expand that marketplace. I just don't want to be talking to people who are already doing business in the Department of Defense. So I spend a lot of time talking to, folks outside the Department of Defense, trying to convince them, yeah, come on board, be part of this team and work with the big primes and get the job done. And I know the big primes are doing the same thing too. They're trying to expand their teammates so that they can find new suppliers so they don't just have one singular supplier on a nuclear submarine, right, Rob? Because that doesn't help anybody, right? So that's the goal, and we just got to keep trying to do the best we can to get there. All right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So this might be a question for not just yourself, but also the senators in the room, but it's other nations make a concerted effort at a government level to protect industries that are critical to their success, right? And so there was U.S. Steel popped up, right? And suddenly there's interest from different buyers, but we've seen how companies from other nations, I'm not saying adversarial ones, but have had the ability to go in and basically invest in American companies, which then potentially causes an issue if you have a situation where suddenly now that friendly nation may not be so friendly. And so does the Department of Defense, does the Navy have any kind of role in being able to limit or guide or provide some sort of oversight on the purchase of these real national assets?
No, we do have a responsibility actually to provide an oversight and be sensitive to which suppliers are trying to invest in the American industrial base for national security gain, and to be sneaky about it, right? So we're constantly looking out, and I'm not going to go into details about how we do it, but I assure you that we're actually constantly looking out for those suspicious investments that are made, and then we try to highlight them the best that we can and use legal means to try to not have them be competitive. And there are numerous examples where we've demonstrated our ability to do that, and that's very, very important. The counter threat challenge, I'll tell you, as a small business owner, there were a lot of things I worried about. I worried about my pipeline. I worried about my employees. The things that I worried about the most was one day waking up and being attacked with a cybersecurity attack that would shut my company down overnight. So I know it's hard for especially small businesses and medium-sized businesses and large businesses too to invest in the infrastructure to protect their own intellectual property, but it's incredibly important. And I have been a strong advocate. I don't talk about it a lot publicly, but I have been a strong advocate since I came in 2 years ago to protect our IP, to protect our intellectual capital in the Department of the Navy and Marine Corps, to make sure that it does not get stolen. Because, there's a reason why their ships look so much like ours. It's kind of basic, right? And we all have a responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen. So we've got to be able to hold those, individuals far more accountable than we have in the past as well too. So we work with the Department of Justice and everyone else that we can to try to, really clamp down when we find somebody that's doing something suspicious. So, thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And of course, go Navy, beat Army. I once asked the German for earmarks for the Navy football team. I can't tell you what he said.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Just a little housekeeping first. The Secretary mentioned young people, workforce pipeline a dozen times. SENEDIA runs a robust internship program. Again, draw your attention back to our website. We have a great program. We put interns through the pipeline. They're usually in their senior year of college or their junior year of college coming through. You get to try them on. Only costs each company $200. We have a grant that pays the rest of the salary for that employee that the state of Rhode Island funds. So please take an opportunity, look at that internship program. It's got a 90% conversion rate on those interns into a full-time role. So look at that on your pipeline. And also, I would take a shot. I'm assuming Alex Hayden, are you here? Alex? Can you stand, Alex? Also, Joe Pacini, are you here? Stay standing for a minute. These guys run and it's politically incorrect, the young professionals group for us, our early career folks. Again, networking the folks in your company. Get to know Joe, get to know Alex, whether it's you or your folks. Please introduce yourself to these young men. They're really driving the next generation and leading this organization for us. So take a minute and say hello to them if you could. Last, back here at 10:15. So go do some networking, go meet some folks. Back here at 10:15, you'll hear the little chimes going when we're ready for you. Thank you.